My biggest fears or concerns for working out during pregnancy, I kind of always heard that it was a little dicey to start working out if you didn't have a, set schedule of working out, and I wasn't before, but I knew I had to, take care of my body during the pregnancy for easier birth. I wasn't coming to IronTribe. I specifically started coming for pre-pregnancy workouts. Before pregnancy, I was just going for walks or doing the Peloton. I decided to trust Jason with my programming for pre-pregnancy workouts because I knew Jason and I knew his background with coaching and whatnot.
So getting prepared for Jenny to come in for some prepartum training, a lot of that, prioritizes just building as much core strength and stability as we can, because we know that that's going to be the biggest thing that starts to change over the next 9 months, is that the abs are going to start to split and separate, things are going to get more and more unstable, a lot more anterior pelvic tilt starts to show up. So basically just trying to get ahead of some of that stuff and just try to get as strong as we can in all those shapes before we start to see it move that direction. So a lot of exercises look pretty normal at first, squatting, hinging, pushing, and pulling just like everybody else is, but just making sure that any other spaces in the program are filled with some things to really build some good integrity for the pelvic floor and for the abdominals, and really everything that just kind of helps hold that shape.
My training was adjusted throughout the pregnancy. The first trimester was a lot heavier weights, and as I went through the second and third trimester, it got more to just mobility, hip mobility, less weight.
During different phases, things move more quickly, and every pregnancy is going to be a little bit different. So there's kind of these general rules we work off of, like, hey, these things are cool in the first trimester, these things are cool in the second trimester, these things are cool in the third. And those are great generalizations, but a lot of it is just communicating with Jenny really, really regularly about, hey, like, do you feel this in the right spot? Do you feel tension in the low back when you do this? And also every once in a while doing like a little poking on the belly to see, it's like, hey, are we putting too much challenge on the abs? You'll start to see this kind of doming or coning shape in the belly when there's maybe a little too much intensity. So it's basically building a plan where we can have the opportunity to make things more challenging if we need to, but building like a really simple foundation that's easy to connect to. And then as we move on adapt, just knowing that, hey, when we start this program, by the time we finish it, especially second trimester, third trimester, we may need to change almost everything that's on here. So I think the biggest piece for that is communication with her. Nutrition throughout the pregnancy, there's a lot of variability because every pregnancy is different. Some people have a lot of nausea. There's cravings for things that you should have, cravings for things that you shouldn't have. As a coach, I was very lucky to be working with Jenny in that regard, because she was very consistent kind of all on her own. She's got good habits in place for prepping meals and, chasing after protein intake and all of these things we need just to be structurally sound in general, but especially during a time when the body's going through so many different changes. So I think the organizations that she had in place before we got started really made a lot of those things smoother, because when the craving showed up, there's just not quite as much guilt behind feeding some of those things, which you probably need to do because we had that foundation kind of in place already. So Jenny was still getting her protein in, still prepping stuff. That way, the surprise pickle cravings that were showing up, you can feed those pickle cravings all you want.
So training impacted my birth experience. It was minimal tearing. I pushed for 40 minutes, and I think that really had a lot to do with the hip mobility movements that we were doing, a lot of stability ball exercises, and I think that really helps. Again,
everybody has a different journey, but as you get into that third trimester, things get tougher and tougher and tougher, and it gets more difficult to get motivated, I would say, to go in there and get your hands on the things that you can still control. And that's one big celebration for Jenny. I mean, she was in here working out like 4 days before baby time, which is really, really cool. And I think how everything is looking now, it kind of showcases, hey, her success after labor versus the fact that she was in here right up until time. I think those things have to be connected.
So I was in labor for 12 hours, and then pushing itself was 40 minutes from start to finish. I came back 2 weeks after I gave birth, and I was ready to get back into the gym just to get a sense of normalcy in my life. Jason had adjusted my programs to be very easy, obviously 2 weeks postpartum. Wasn't doing a lot of the stuff before, a lot of stretching, just focusing on the core workouts and not pushing too hard 2 weeks postpartum.
Things started to look a little bit differently, mostly because, giving birth is a somewhat traumatic event, right? A lot of damage, a lot of muscles that have been stretched out for a really long period of time, so they don't have the ability to contract and stabilize things the way that they would. Especially right after pregnancy, we know that we're gonna have this challenging road ahead, but for that particular phase, we really just kind of leaned into stuff that we knew she could nail. So it wasn't a lot of addressing pelvic floor strength just yet, ab strength just yet, basically just giving the body time to recover all on its own. So during that time, we leaned into like a little bit of extra, bicep curls and, tricep work and some shoulder stuff and some exercises that could be done sitting down just to get a little bit more healing time. And then very shortly after, we kind of started to rev things back up with some exercises to build some more stability and strength for the pelvic floor. Lots of squeezing things between your legs, doing, glute bridges and stuff like that. But we had a little bit of time to rev our way up towards those things.
So my postpartum workouts were focused on, specifically that I just gave birth. The programs were tailored to that. We were able to work around everything that comes postpartum.
We know that the abdominal wall is going to separate a lot to the center, and over time it kind of starts to stretch out before it actually starts to separate. And a big change that we see is a lot of anterior tilt in the pelvis through pregnancy because we separate down the middle and the pelvis kind of wants to dump forward. So that's where you'll see some back pain and some things like that starting to show up. And we can't really avoid those things. But what we can do is take a look at core stability exercises that really reflect that neutral spine position. So it's not as much hollow holds and planks and things that are kind of straight down the middle as people think. There's a lot of side plank exercises because the pelvic structure is really neutral in those. There's a lot of anti-rotation exercises because I think that's where we're the most at risk for some low back stuff, especially with that anterior tilt and maybe some excess rotating through the low back. So a lot of side planks, a lot of anti-rotation stuff with bands and exercises like that basically help us resist change in that trunk position versus always focusing on just squeezing everything as tight as we can. Strength is never a weakness and weakness is never a strength, right? There are still so many things that you can do to get yourself even stronger than you are now through your pregnancy journey. And all that strength that you build is just gonna make the process down the road go a lot smoother. You speak with women all the time whose, kids are in their 20s and they're still having issues with pelvic floor dysfunction or, some back pain or just structural weakness that we would really love to avoid, right? So we have those outlets now to come in and train and get some things that are kind of refined towards what you need and what you're feeling so that the process of labor is easier. Jenny basically just flexed that baby out in no time at all. And a lot of women are not fortunate enough to be able to say the same thing. And the journey after pregnancy, being able to get right back in here into the gym, build some strength, and just kind of get back to life as you want to live it versus having just enough structural support to go to work and then come home and just day-to-day functions around the house. Like if you have a higher standard for yourself and you want to be active and you don't want to feel physically limited, then we can come in and start building these tools now instead of waiting for baby to be here when life is crazy to try to get started on those things.
The intentionality of my programming definitely helped in a positive way my birth experience.
Hey Jimmy, what do we do at the end of every video?
Like and subscribe.